The champagne glass shattered on the marble, a sound like a gunshot in the middle of my retirement party. My daughter-in-law's hand was empty, her face a mask of horror. But she wasn't the one on the floor. It was her mother, Helen, convulsing, a terrible white foam gathering at the corners of her mouth. The laughter in the room died, replaced by a collective gasp. My son Michael screamed for someone to call 911. And through the chaos, as my daughter-in-law, Jessica, began to sob hysterically, my eyes locked on the fallen glass, the one with the tiny, almost invisible chip on the rim. My glass. And in that frozen moment, one cold, clear thought cut through the noise. That poison was meant for me. I knelt beside Helen, my movements calm, my mind racing. I could feel the eyes of the other guests on me, seeing a composed 70-year-old woman handling a crisis. They couldn't see the truth. They couldn't know that just 20 minutes earlier, I had watched my own daughter-in-law empty a dark vial into that very glass. They couldn't know that I was the one who had quietly switched it with her mother's. As the paramedics rushed in, I looked at my son. I saw the panic in his face, but underneath it, I saw a flicker of something else. A sharp, terrified glance toward his wife, a silent question. What went wrong? They had started a game tonight, a deadly one. And as I stood up, grabbing my purse to follow the ambulance, I made a promise to myself. They started it, but I was going to finish it. If you're watching this, I hope you'll subscribe, and I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Before I tell you exactly how this nightmare began, let me be very clear. I didn't build a consulting firm from the ground up after my husband died by being a fool. When someone tries to poison you at your own party, you notice. Especially when they've been looking at your $23 million bank account like a starving wolf looks at a feast. Just 2 hours earlier, my home had been filled with warmth. I just finalized the sale of my company, the culmination of my life's work. My son Michael had insisted on this party. "Mom, you deserve it," he'd said, those sincere brown eyes of his working overtime. It's funny, isn't it? How a mother can look into her son's eyes and still see the little boy who brought her dandelions, even when a stranger is looking back. "Let Jessica handle everything," he'd urged. "You just relax." I should have known something was wrong then. Jessica offering to play hostess? This was a woman who considered loading the dishwasher a major life event. Suddenly, she was a whirlwind of activity, arranging flowers and polishing crystal like her life depended on it, which I suppose it did. The party was lovely. 30 of my dearest friends and colleagues. She'd even hired a bartender. "Nothing's too good for you, Sarah," she'd gushed. It was while I was chatting with an old partner that I saw it. The furtive glance, the vial, the poison meant for me, slipped into the one glass she knew I would use. And in that moment I had a choice. 'Cause a scene that would shatter my family, or play the game she'd started. So I took the glass she offered, my heart hammering against my ribs. I smiled my thanks and I waited. I found my moment when Jessica was busy showing off a new diamond bracelet. I drifted over to where her mother, Helen, a dear, if slightly scattered woman, was standing. I set my glass down right next to her purse. A moment later, she picked it up without a second thought. 5 minutes after that, she was complimenting its interesting flavor. And then my world exploded. At the hospital, the air smelled of antiseptic and fear. I stayed close, listening to the doctors. I heard one of them mention plant alkaloids to a nurse. A detail that told me this wasn't some random accident. This was researched. Jessica paced the waiting room, her designer heels clicking a frantic rhythm on the linoleum. Michael sat stiffly, his phone buzzing with texts he wouldn't answer. He kept glancing from his phone to me, a desperate look in his eyes. Was it guilt? Or was it fear that their plan had unraveled? "This is just terrible," Jessica said for the 10th time. "Poor Mom." I patted her shoulder. "It is, dear. You know," I added casually, "it's a good thing she only had a few sips of that champagne." Jessica's pacing stopped for a single frozen beat. "Champagne?" she asked, her voice a little too high. "You think it was the champagne?" "Oh, probably not." I waved a dismissive hand. Just an old woman's mind seeing patterns. But her face had gone pale, and I saw Michael watching us, his jaw tight. He knew I was fishing. And he was terrified of what I might catch. After 3 hours, a doctor told us Helen was stable. As we left, Michael walked me to my car. "Mom," he said, his voice low, You should stay with us tonight. I'd feel better if you weren't alone. How thoughtful. Keep the target close while you figure out your next move. That's sweet, dear, but I'll be fine. I have that new security system, remember? I watched in my rearview mirror as he and Jessica argued in the parking lot, their gestures sharp and angry. Back home, among the debris of the party, I poured myself a frail glass of champagne from a fresh bottle. It was time to figure out what my family had planned for me, and more importantly, what I was going to do about it. I spent the night doing what I do best, research. Not with computers, but with a clear memory and a lifetime of knowing the people who had just tried to kill me. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, the sky outside a bruised purple, and I laid out the ugly truth of my son's life. His architectural firm was failing. Jessica's boutique was a vanity project hemorrhaging money. Their house, the one I'd helped them buy, was mortgaged to the hilt. Have you ever loved someone so completely, so unconditionally, that you just kept giving, never stopping to ask if you were helping them or simply funding their destruction? A few thousand here, a down payment there, private school tuition for my granddaughter, Emma. I tallied it up. Nearly $200,000 in 5 years. I had called them gifts. But now I saw them for what they were. An advance on an inheritance they were no longer willing to wait for. The phone rang at 7:30. It was Jessica. Sarah, I was so worried about you, she cooed. You didn't feel sick at all, did you? She was checking her work. Perfectly fine, dear, I said. How's Helen? The doctors said she can go home today. They think she just took her medication on an empty stomach. A lie. Helen organized her pills like a military campaign. They were very clear it wasn't food poisoning, she added, a little too quickly. She was desperate to close the case. Terrified I might ask someone to test that half-full bottle of champagne still sitting on my counter. An hour later my doorbell rang. It was Michael, holding a box of my favorite pastries. Thought you might want some breakfast, Mom. Watching him move around my kitchen, a space he'd known since childhood, my heart ached. Where was the little boy who built forts from couch cushions? When did he become a man who would let his wife try to murder his mother? How are you holding up? He asked, his face a mask of concern. It takes more than a little excitement to rattle me, you know that, I said. He gave a weak smile. That's what I was afraid of. An odd thing to say. Look, Mom, he began, leaning forward. Jessica and I have been talking about your situation. My situation? You're 70. Living alone in this big house, all that money. It's a lot for one person to manage. What if what happened to Helen had happened to you? Alone. He was using their failed attempt on my life as a reason I needed their protection. The audacity was stunning. We've been doing some research, he continued, pulling out his phone. There's a wonderful senior community, Sunset Manor. It's more like a resort. We could visit all the time. The pitch was slick. They had pictures, brochures, a whole story cooked up. There's a waiting list, he said. But we could get you in immediately if you pay the $400,000 entrance fee up front. There it was. The first grab for the money. And once I was tucked away, isolated, who would have power of attorney over the rest? It sounds lovely, dear, I said, my voice smooth as honey. But I'm happy here. Mom, Dad's been gone 15 years, he said, his voice soft with fake sympathy. It's time for a new chapter. If I hadn't seen what I'd seen, I might have believed him. It would have been touching. Instead, it was terrifying. I'll think about it, I said, the only words that would end the conversation. His relief was a physical thing, a slump of his shoulders. As he left, he warned me not to visit Helen for a few days, saying the doctor wanted her to rest. Of course he did. Keep the victim and the witness apart. As soon as he was gone, I called my lawyer, David Hartwell. David, I said, I need to see you. Now. I looked out at the roses my husband had planted, blooming in defiant reds and pinks. I think my family is trying to kill me. David's office, with its dark wood and leather chairs, had always been my sanctuary. I told him everything. The vial. The switched glass. The nursing home pitch. He listened, his face impassive. The problem, Sarah, is proving intent to kill you, he said. But there's a more immediate threat. Guardianship. They can use your age and this incident to petition the court to have you declared incompetent. Once they control you, they control your money. Sunset Manor isn't just a place to live. It's a place to trap you. Any woman who has ever felt her independence threatened knows the cold dread that washed over me then. What do we do? I asked. First, we get your competency legally documented by a top psychiatrist. Then, he said, a sharp smile on his face, we get creative with your estate plan. And you need to install a state-of-the-art security system. Today, I left his office with a clear plan. That afternoon, my house was transformed into a fortress. And by evening, I had a new will. Michael's inheritance was slashed to a small lifelong trust. Enough to live on, not enough to live lavishly. Jessica was cut out entirely. Attempted murder, I decided, was a deal-breaker. The bulk of my $23 million estate would now go to cancer research in my late husband's name. Just as I was signing the final papers, my new security monitor chimed. It was Michael and Jessica back again. Mom, we need to talk, Michael said. They marched into my living room, and I saw his eyes catch on the new camera in the corner. Package theft, I said smoothly. Sarah, Jessica began, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. We feel terrible. What if something we brought to the party made Mom sick? We think you should come stay with us. Just until you're safe. It was the same script, but this time it was more aggressive. More desperate. At your age, living alone, anything could happen, Michael pressed. You know, I said thoughtfully, you are absolutely right. That's why I spent the day updating my will. The temperature in the room plummeted. I could see the frantic calculations in their eyes. Just some minor adjustments, I added with a sweet smile, to reflect my current priorities. They left in a stunned silence. I watched on my monitor as they sat in their car, locked in a furious whispered argument. The game had changed, and they knew it. The next morning I had an unexpected visitor. It was Helen. Sarah, she said, her voice shaking. Jessica told me I had a reaction to my medication, but I don't take any medication. And I remember the champagne tasted bitter. I think my daughter tried to poison you. Her words confirmed everything, but hearing them from her, seeing the pain in her eyes broke my heart. I told her the truth, that I had seen it all and that I had switched the glasses. The color drained from her face. She tried to kill you, she whispered, and I almost died instead. We sat together, two women betrayed by our own children, and I told her my plan. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, I said. Just not the way they expect. After she left, I called a private investigator. I want to know everything about my son's finances, I told her. While she dug into their secrets, I made my next move. I called Michael and asked him to lunch, at our old celebratory spot. He arrived looking anxious. I've been thinking, Michael, I said, looking him in the eye. I think you're right. I called Sunset Manor. They have an opening, but I have to pay the entrance fee by Friday. His face lit up with a greedy, unconcealed joy. That's wonderful, Mom. I'll need your help with the paperwork, I continued. And the facility requires a power of attorney on file. I was hoping you would take that on. Of course, Mom, he said, his voice thick with false emotion. Whatever you need. He thought he was walking me into his trap. He had no idea he was the one who was caught. The investigator's report came 2 days later. It was worse than I could have imagined. They were drowning in over $80,000 of credit card debt. His business was a failure. They had refinanced their home 3 times. And then came the final chilling detail. Jessica took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on you 6 months ago. The investigator said. This wasn't a recent desperate plan. This was a long-term strategy. The investigator also found monthly payments to a Dr. Richard Steinberg, a geriatric psychiatrist. My blood ran cold. I called David. Steinberg, he said. Sarah, he has a reputation. He's the guy families hire when they want an elderly relative declared incompetent. The full picture was horrifyingly clear. The plan was to get me into Sunset Manor. If I went willingly, they'd use the power of attorney to drain my accounts. If I resisted, they had Dr. Steinberg on standby to have me declared mentally unfit. It was a perfect vicious trap. David, I said, I need you to draw up some fake power of attorney papers. And I need them by tomorrow. Friday morning, Michael and Jessica arrived. A briefcase full of documents in hand. They spread the papers across my dining room table, their faces gleaming with triumph. I signed everything. The Sunset Manor contract, the financial disclosures, and finally the power of attorney. Michael's hands trembled as he took it from me. "This is the right decision, Mom," he said. "I know," I replied. "There's just one final paper my lawyer needs to witness." "He's on his way over." The doorbell rang right on cue. But it wasn't David. It was Detective Lisa Morrison. "Mrs. Wilson," she said. "We need to talk about a suspected poisoning." Jessica's face went white. "It was my mother, she had a reaction to her medication." "That's not what the hospital's toxicology report says, Mrs. Hartwell," the detective said calmly, pulling out a notebook. "It says she ingested a concentrated dose of oleander extract, a deadly poison, which we also found in the champagne bottle from your party." Michael stared at Jessica, horror dawning on his face. "Jess, what did you do?" "And then there's the matter of the $500,000 life insurance policy you took out on Mrs. Wilson," the detective continued. "That gives you a very clear motive." "Sarah, tell them this is insane," Jessica shrieked. I looked her in the eye. "I saw you, Jessica. I saw you put the poison in my glass. I switched it with your mother's." Michael's head snapped toward me. "You knew." "I've known everything," I said, my voice like ice. "The debt, the insurance policy, the plan to have me declared incompetent with Dr. Steinberg. Everything." The fake power of attorney papers slipped from his numb fingers. "I didn't know about the poison," he sobbed. "I swear." "But you knew about the rest," I stated. "The plan to take my money." His silence was his confession. As they handcuffed a screaming Jessica, she spat at me. "You think you're so clever." "I know I am," I said softly. After they were gone, my son sat broken in my living room. "I thought she was just going to scare you," he whispered. "Stage a break-in or something to convince you to move." He was willing to terrorize his own mother. "Michael," I said, "those papers you're so proud of? They're fake. They give you power of attorney over a bank account with $1 in it. My real money is in trusts you can never touch. And my new will? It's already been filed." He stared at me, his face crumbling. "You've destroyed my life," he whispered. "No, Michael," I said, looking at the stranger my son had become. "You destroyed your own. I just made sure you couldn't destroy mine." 3 months later, my garden is in full bloom. Jessica was sentenced to 15 years. Michael got 3 for conspiracy. My granddaughter, Emma, is coming to visit this summer. She called me last night crying, "Grandma, I'm so sorry. She is innocent in all this and she is my future." My friend Helen and I meet for coffee every week, 2 survivors. She's writing a book. She asked me if I regret how it all ended. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret protecting myself. My lawyer called today. The insurance policy on my life was voided. The bank is foreclosing on Michael and Jessica's house, the house I bought them. They asked if I wanted to buy it back. I said no. Let it go to a family who can fill it with honest love, not greedy ambition. My phone just buzzed. It was a text from Emma. "Grandma, I got accepted to Northwestern. Pre-law just like you suggested." I smiled. That's the real victory. Ensuring the next generation has a chance to choose a better path. I started this story with a poisoned glass of champagne. But it's really about the difference between being old and being powerless. I am 70 years old, and I am the most powerful I have ever been. Any mother who has fought for her family, and for herself will understand. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, I would be so honored to hear your thoughts in the comments. Remember, my dears, it is never ever too late to come home to yourself.